I think I've always kind of been interested in art, and in a way, the power of art as a way to record a culture and also to let you remember something by. So even when I was a kid, when I travel, I would buy art. I would buy a painting, although it's
But
not.
even when you're a kid.
Well, yeah. So I always feel that there's something, that art can do to let us remember a place, and that's why I felt that, I felt art has a certain power. So when I was working a lot in China, that was like in the early 2000. That was the time when there was not an art scene in China yet. And I had a lot of time, after work. So I would go to gallery and look at what they have there. I think the Chinese art actually kind of developed very quickly in a very short time. So I started looking at them probably around 2003. And then within a short time, it really boomed, and it really changed to a very strong art market, and prices were high and all that. And that was also the time when I started to look at Hong Kong artists. At the time, in a way, there were a lot of debate whether Hong Kong artists was even relevant in the Greater China market, because they were very different, and a lot of Hong Kong artists were not getting much support. And so that was around the time that I thought that it would be interesting to maybe start looking more at Hong Kong artists. The Hong Kong art kind of community was a lot smaller, let's say 10 years ago. You could pretty much meet all the artists you want to meet. And I think, and at the time, some of the artists don't even have galleries to work with them. So the only way that you can actually look at their work would be to go to their studio. I mean, including Lam Zhongpang, and including Lei Git at that time, and Zheng Jinhua. None of them actually worked with galleries. So that at that time, it was a way to go and meet them, and then also look at their work in their studio. Of course, now the situation has changed a lot. I think, in a way, I don't want to be such a kind of generous person as to say that I support them. I feel that it is, as a collector and as somebody who loves art, I also get a lot back from, meeting these artists, looking at their work and collecting their work. And I think, so it's a mutual situation. I feel that it's almost like a win-win situation. When you discover an artist, like when you discovered their work when they were a student, and then eventually they grew on to become a very important and respected artist, I think that's a great achievement.
That's very rewarding.
It's very rewarding, and that's why I tend to like to focus on younger artists that are just starting out, or just starting to get recognition, and I think those are probably the most interesting time to start collecting an artist.
Today I want to talk a little more about William as an artist.
Yeah, I think to me, I've always been struggling between, of my identity between being an architect and being an artist, and I always feel that it's much more difficult to be an artist, because architect, we do get a brief from our client, and then we pretty much execute what our client wishes to accomplish. And of course, along the way, we have our own personality coming through our work. But as an artist, I find it very hard to create something that will have to move somebody, and nobody told you what to do. You just have to come up with something, and then you have to create it, and it has to communicate. It has to move another person, and I think that is, to me, was a lot more difficult, and that's why I had always been struggling between my two different, passion, architecture and art, and that's why for a while I was actually doing installation, because that kind of bridges the two together. But I mean, this past 6 months, 9 months, it's due to COVID-19, it really changed everyone's life. It actually changed the way I work, the way I spend time, and most importantly, also it gave me an opportunity to then start to explore painting. So my mother passed away about 6 months ago. So I start to feel that, painting could be a way for me to express certain emotion, and also for me to be almost meditative in a way. It's almost like a certain kind of therapy. And so that's why I've been doing for the, since I discovered the oil-based paint, water-based paint, I've been painting regularly, almost every morning for 1 hour to 2 hours. And actually, I was doing it in my mother's room, and actually I started painting her the room itself, and then I posted them on Instagram, and actually a lot of people were quite encouraging when they saw my painting, because I never knew where I stand in terms of painting. I knew I wanted to do these just for myself, and in a way almost to kind of kill some time. But then when I posted them, and some people actually were very encouraging with their reply, and now I'm keeping this up and starting to do more and more of it. And some used to be just kind of at the what do you call it, 臨摹, it's like you just sit
Copy
in the place and or maybe it's
sketch.
not 臨摹, it's like I would be in situ kind of painting.
Yes.
But then I also start to think that what if I were to turn this into something more long term? Then I started to also paint from photographs, and so far I've been quite happy with what I'm doing, and also it helps me to kind of spend more time on doing something interesting and productive, I guess.
Thanks for sharing. The series or the few pieces that you did, painting your mother's room in there, was something that really moved me, maybe because of my personal experience of losing my mom as well. And it was really very poetic to me. We have to observe very closely on different items in the room, like the dresser or different part of the room. Those things were absolutely personal. But at the same time, somehow your brushstrokes moved me and really helped me to to relieve or some of my memories, etc. So I want to ask you, how did these painting in situ in your mom's room? You also painted your late brother's apartment and some still life, like books from Parasite, etc. Or even your own office. I visited it a few days ago. Oh, I recognize that's actually your own office. What did you get out of it?
It started as kind of really something very personal. So I started just, being at home and then painting my mother's room. And I start to maybe actually look more into the detail. Used to be I would go into my mother's room and I would think, oh gee, like it's full of these 老土 elements, right? But then I start to look at it more closely, and everything has a certain relationship with each other. And there's a certain, things that are very dear to her, she put very close to herself. And also I start to realize that, I think there's certain philosophical thing that came out of painting itself, which in a way I didn't realize before. Of course, normally when you look at something black, okay, this is black, or this is stainless steel, it's supposed to be shiny and white. But when you start to paint it, it actually is not that. It has a lot more to it than what you just take for granted it is. So it actually is a way of really analyzing, really realizing what you see in certain thing might not be what that thing actually is. I guess this could be applied to any situation, even to the situation now in Hong Kong. So what you see is not exactly what it is, but when you look carefully, when you trust your eye more and analyze it, you would actually see different thing out of it. So black is not really black and white is not all white. Sometimes I want to paint something white, but if I don't have something dark next to it, it's very hard to show the whiteness of it. So white and black are almost always complementing, and it's all the color in between. So this is my mother's bed, which
this is a cushion.
It's a cushion. So in a way, it happens to be a cushion with a heart shape. And actually now my grandchildren, they actually realize, oh, there's a heart there. So I think painting can relate to many different people, and each person might look at it differently. Maybe because of my training as an architect, so I think I could see that this is also something quite architectural.
And also the way you see the perspective and how you show us the perspective, it's just amazingly detailed.
Right.
Maybe in a few lines you've got it. Look at the line of this headboard.
Yeah, right. Actually, when I was in university, I never took formal painting classes. We have classes for architecture, and we have to do drawing classes. And the first thing we had to draw was to draw glasses. So they are transparent, and you can only express them in a few lines. So my teacher used to be very excited when they saw my work, because I somehow can, within a few lines,
grasp that.
Get the shape of a glass. And I think maybe this is something that to me is also interesting. That I don't wanna be kind of like a realist artist. That's not my interest. But I think I want to be able to communicate certain truth or certain reality with my painting.
And the ambience or the emotions that
right.
Or some memoir, some memories that you have.
Yeah, and to be able to draw, to represent something with the minimal stroke, but to be able to create that depth and to me, it's probably what painting is all about.
So you're consciously trying to use minimal strokes, as few as possible, to complete what you wanted to.
I would like very much to.
That's great.
And
that's
I think
a very interesting
one
direction.
very complimenting thing. I was talking to Kevin Ching, and he was saying, "Oh, I've been following your work," and he was quite impressed at how he can zoom into the detail, and it's actually just a few abstract lines.
That's right.
I think to me that's a real compliment. Okay, so I'll show you this one. It's my brother's apartment
yes.
in London. So this I painted from a photograph.
But why would you have a photo of the apartment in the first place?
This is an apartment that my brother shared with all of us. So we would go there and travel around at London, and then we would stay in his apartment. And that's why I have photos of it. Of course, certain thing I don't really see everything in my photos. So sometimes I'll ask my wife, do you have that angle of it? And then actually after I painted, I also asked my siblings who were also there that, oh, do you know what this is in this corner? Because I saw something there, but I couldn't tell what it is. Right. So in a way, it's not intentional when I took these photos that I would paint them. Not at this stage, but then when I felt that I wanted to express certain emotion, then I started to paint this painting.
So would you feel relief or I guess happy, and when you completed it, that you kind of went through like a process of definitely remembering your brother, because this is where he lived and spent a lot of time in.
Yeah, I think it was a very good kind of emotional expression.
Did you feel recuperated after that?
Yeah, and also I also start to feel that a lot of people think that, okay, portrait paintings, of course it's about people, but can spaces also be about people? And I think more and more so I feel that there is this, that spaces is about people.
Because none of the works that you did, apart from the photos, none of the works actually have a subject in there, but at the same time they are very personal. It's kind of ironic because you are at the forefront of collecting, and of course also in your, I've listened to your recent interview as well on podcast, and you do have your vision and wishes in how architecture should be directed, and perhaps also how contemporary art should continue, or not should, but would interest you. But to a lot of critics or academics, there is really nothing much contemporary in painting, especially with an old medium like oil, although you found this water-based oil, but it's still oil. And so, but like, how did you kind of, what do you think about this? How do you feel? Like, you're now in the modern age already? Like, you give up like contemporary art, or what do you think?
Yeah, well, actually, I always felt that oil is one of the most difficult medium because so many of it has been done. And I did share the view of these critics that maybe oil is not a relevant subject anymore in this day and age. But then when I start to paint these, at first, okay, I started as something more personal. I wouldn't define these necessarily as contemporary art or traditional art, or it's just something that I wanted to do for myself. And then I realized that in a way, it's a way of expression. No matter what medium you choose, it's a way of expression. And if it's expressing something personal and relevant, and if you have various way of looking at painting differently than your predecessors, then I think it's contemporary. Once I heard somebody tell me, I forgot who, but somebody said that every art period was contemporary at the time. So Renaissance was contemporary in its attitude. When they were doing it, they discovered a certain way of looking at things, and then they started to express it that way. So I think in every period, as long as you are doing something relevant to that time, it is contemporary. I wouldn't want to kind of box myself into a medium that kind of confine me from just doing certain things. Even during installation, it's been done for the last, how many years? Like 50 years, even video work and all that. None of them are kind of absolutely groundbreaking. It's always been done. I think art, and in a way, it is derivative, but the way you derive it, the way you make it relevant, I think that's the most important. What medium, it's not important. I love some of the ink work. You could say that it's low-tone, but then it can also be very relevant to this day and age. Depends on how you interpret it.
William, I can really feel your passion when you're talking about this this pursuit, recent practice of yours. And how have you, in general, evolved through painting?
Like I said, painting is giving me a lot of philosophical thinking in a way that, you know, things are not necessarily black or white, that there are a lot in between. What you think is it's white, it actually has a lot of color in it.
Through observation.
Through observation. Okay, so I want to paint this, I want to paint this reflection, but I'm limited by my ability to do it. Maybe I haven't gotten there yet. I couldn't do it. So I struggle to do it, and I think that also it's a very positive thing, that you're struggling to achieve something that is beyond your ability. And maybe it is beyond your ability or beyond your means, and you might not be able to achieve it, but the fact that you're trying to do it, and you're trying to do it, you know, with a passion, I think that is also very positive in a way. And I think the most important thing I felt that in terms of painting is when I when I was painting my mother's room, and then I realized, oh, okay, of course that curtain was pink. But then when I start to look at it, it's really not that. So what you think or what you believe might not be what the reality is. And I think as the way that we live nowadays, it's very important to also realize that what you think might not be what the reality is. And I think, you know, with these kind of learnings, I think I will start to, you know, rethink a lot of things in life. I would realize that I have a lot of time, but this time could stop any time. So I think this is what this whole period is telling us, that it might change all of a sudden. So in a way, you have to pretty much live life to the fullest almost, that you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. There's so much that is beyond our control. And I think in a way, you know, the lesson is that we need to be true to what we believe. We have to be serious about what we do and try to do the best, because this could be your legacy and you don't know when it will end. So I think the fragility of life it's very crucial at this moment that we're living through.
And this new normal, like all the things that have evolved, are there things that you want to keep doing even after COVID was, like, hopefully will leave soon?
Yes.
What kind of new normal will continue to be your normal?
Well, I would hope very much to be able to keep painting. It's something that to me, it's not really about a work or two works, but to me, I hope it's about a process. And that's why I always feel about art or an artist's work also. I don't think an artist is stationary at one point. You know, you might have created a masterpiece, but that's not the most important. The most important is what's next. How do you continue? How do you, at the end of your life, how does your work define yourself, right? So I think if that's the case, then I would definitely like to keep painting as something, as to me, hopefully it will be a new normal.
So you got a chance to try a lot of different positions, I guess, in the art and architecture ecosystem. What are the things that you may be able to share with young people to help them move along this time?
Well, I think achievements come over time, and you might feel that certain people have achieved certain things, but I think you yourself also have achieved certain things, right? You went through school, you know, you started a job. Life is not easy, and it has never been easy. Even, you know, at my age, I went through a lot to come to this stage, and I think the important thing is to realize that each moment is important, and you just try to do your best. I always say, like, don't let an opportunity pass. You know, if you have a chance, go for it. Don't wait and say, oh, let's wait till tomorrow. Nowadays, I think, you know, you should grab the moment and go with it. Eventually you will do a little bit more and a little bit better, and then other things will come. And you know, when I first collected my early Hong Kong artwork, well, I would say maybe the earliest was like Lee Kit and Lam Dong Pang. Lam Dong Pang was actually already working with Grotto, so I collected his work through Grotto. But Lee Kit I went to his studio. He wasn't working with anyone. So at the time, I would have no knowledge how his career would develop, and he probably wouldn't have any either. So, but then little by little, opportunity come. You keep doing things that are, you know, interesting to people, and then your chance will come. So, and also I think as a young person, you shouldn't look for immediate success. I think success is great, but sustaining success is even more difficult. It's difficult, right? To be able to go to one step and then to be able to go to the next step, and the next step, I think it's difficult. So you don't need to jump all the way to the top, because it's very hard to stay up there for the rest of your life. So I would say, like, gradually take things as it comes, get the best opportunity out of it, and enjoy what you do.
And throughout your career, and have you met any mentors and or any backlog who helps you? Did you go actively search for them, or how should one kind of approach a person like this?
Yes, I think I have had a few backlog in my career, and I think the thing is, when that happened, you might not know. You know, our first project with Nike was a tiny little space that you know, they asked us to do. We weren't even the designer. We were just helping to execute a design that a US company has made. But then we did a really good job for that. And then the next project came, and then we are the designer. Even though it was still a small shop, but we were the designer. And then the next project came, it was a big project, it was their office. So I think, you know, you will meet backlog, but you might not know at that moment what it is. But then you just use the best opportunity out of it. I have a story about collecting that I want to share. One time I was in London, and I was just kind of walking around the galleries, and I bumped into this gallery that actually the door was not even open. I knocked, and then I went in, and then I bought some work from that gallery. And actually many years later, the gallery actually told me, he wrote me an email and said, "You were like a godsend at that time. We were struggling. It was during the 2008 financial crisis. The work were being, a lot of the orders were being canceled. He was expecting a kid, and they were about to move to another country. And when they were struggling, and then all of a sudden I walked in and I bought a piece of work. And actually that, he said, saved them. And I had no idea that had happened. But then I was very touched when he told me that, because what we think is something maybe not relevant, but maybe it became very relevant for somebody. I became the backlog of this person. So I think, again, it's really, the story is to cherish life and to make the best out of it, and you never know what's gonna happen next. But well, one thing is, like, you know, just keep going and try to make the best out of it.